I mentioned that there were some holidays, and then I thought, well, if I put them all on the table together and I just lay them out, that there'll be something that they all have in common. And so originally when I did that, I decided that what they had in common was celebrating in service and celebrating coming together in service. And that's because I was trying really hard to combine about 4 of them. I'll tell you what they were. First of all, we have Wesak, which is Buddha Day. One day in the Buddhist calendar that actually turned out to be on the 4th. I missed it. Even though in Ashland, Oregon, they have a whole week dedicated to this concept. Buddha Day celebrates the birth, the enlightenment, and the passing, the transition of the Buddha. And so originally I was all keen on bringing that in somehow. Started out the week looking at Buddhism. And I have little Tibetan prayer wheels on my ears, in recognition of that piece. So moving along, then there are 3 versions of the 10 Commandments. There is the Jewish celebration, and then there are several different Christian ones, and then there's also an Islamic interpretation, and I'm not familiar with that one, but Jews and Christians alike celebrate and call it different things. I spelled it wrong in the newsletter. If you did open the newsletter, you'll see that I spelled it wrong, and I'm going to try this again, because I have it. Shavuot. Did I say that correctly? Anybody know? Okay. So anyway, no matter what you call it, observing the 50th day from Passover or Easter, and the idea that the law was handed down, we couldn't possibly go into all of that with about at least an 8 or a 10-week class, but suffice it to say that some amazing things have been shared that we have passed down and interpreted and done things with for a long time. So I'm looking, right, of course, on Wikipedia, because I'm one of those people who initially didn't want to know whatever those were, because I got this little bone in my body that says, don't tell me what to do, right? The funny thing is, excuse me, that these commandments, purportedly, were originally some higher ideas that not everybody could fully understand, so they needed to be put in simple terms. Like, instead of this mystical, esoteric thing that was so elusive, just say, don't do that and you'll be all right. So there were a whole bunch of don't do that, thou shalt not this and that and the other thing. And the funny thing is that nowadays, when we just crack open a book, and by the way, they've been available for about 100 years. One of the ones I was looking at was written in 1913, another in 1934, another one I think in the 50s or 60s, and that's just to name a few. You open a book and look at the metaphysical interpretation, and what's happened is the hidden meaning in things has been revealed and written about and spoken about and taught and published, and it's available. It's no longer hidden. You might have to, have something that causes you to discover it, to stumble upon it, maybe to walk in this door even. But those things are no longer hidden. In the beginning, though, they were so mysterious, they were not graspable by everyone. One of the things that was said contextually about the time of these original laws being offered up is that, with the exception of royalty and the wealthy, the others were very busy just making sure they got through every day with food on the table and a roof over their head and so on. And that the idea of having the time and the inclination to study was naturally limited to a smaller number of people. So now we can do things a little differently, no matter what we're doing. Even if we're really working hard just to get from one week to the next, we can still look on the internet or buy a book. Go get a used book, borrow it. But there are opportunities for us to learn, and there's an inclination. So yes, there's this concept of these things called the 10 Commandments. And reverse psychology is so excellent because I tried to avoid looking at them for most of the week. I thought, no, I'm not going to go there. But every time I said that, I'd go over and open up another book. Or I'd ask one of my colleagues online and get something juicy and say, okay, well, maybe. Like I said, I started out trying to figure out how Buddhism and the whole Ten Commandment piece, plus one other thing, which is that yesterday was Armed Services Day. I was really trying to find a way to string them all together. And I don't recommend that. Okay, never mind. That's where I got this idea that when we come together in service, if we remember what it takes to come together, we can do great things. That's a fine idea. That's a nice general topic. And as try as I might to go there, I just couldn't do it. So back to those 10 Commandments. And I kept working at it thinking, well, I looked on Wikipedia, and if you keep scrolling down, you find alternatives to these statements. There are some from George Carlin that are very amusing. there are no doubt some from other people, of years gone by and current day that just say, all right, if you want 10 good things that I should remember to guide myself by, well, here they are. And there were some from the naturalists, there were some from the optimists and the pessimists and the thises and the thats, and they were all good. But I recognized something in a few of those, which was such a strong need to find an alternative. It was defiant because I don't like people telling me, thou shalt this or that, or thou shalt not this or that. I think many of us have realized I have my own capacity for revelation, thank you very much. I have my own capacity to discover. Well, the thing is, truth is built in, no matter how we get to it. So these laws say, thou shalt not, this or that, and I'll give you some examples in a minute. But when you look at the metaphysical translation, what they also is say, go ahead and try it. It doesn't say I dare you. and apparently Spirit never says I told you so. But what happens is if you go ahead and try this thing, this forbidden whatever, the natural consequence, the natural outcome of that activity will show up. And it will inspire you. You might say, whoa, I'm never going to do that again. Then you've made your own choice about it. Now you go back to this idea and it doesn't look so bad. And maybe that was the plan all along. Maybe if we just roll out a bunch of things that say, thou shalt not this and that, all the humans will go play and they'll all stub their toes and break their arms and get black eyes and realize, gosh, maybe that's not the way to do these things. It seems to me whether you follow them directly without question or say, none for me, thanks, that we ultimately end up knowing what we need to know. So, the metaphysical translation of some of these say very interesting things. I'm just going to pull this as my reference. This is the list. The list. These 10 things. I can hardly read them out loud because, that resistance just sort of comes up in me. But the first one talks about having just one God. Now, the metaphysical translation would sound like any self-help book or any self-help group you've ever been in. If you give your power away to other people, places, and things, and let him or her or it or them or whatever have power over you, you're going to have a bad day. If you keep doing it, you're going to have a series of bad days. If you have a habit of doing it, you're going to have like a whole patch of that. But if you remember that there's only one power, one source, whatever you choose to call it. I know in this room and many like it, you can call it whatever you want. There's no obligation to assign gender or even a description. But there's one energy, one power, one presence, one substance in the universe that created all life out of itself. And when we can identify that and see it in everyone we meet, in everything we encounter, in every situation and circumstance, look for the good and praise it find the gift, find the pony that's responsible for the big pile, as they say, whatever, if we allow ourselves to recognize that there's one operating unity, one harmony, one power, one presence, we can avoid a lot of difficulty. So it shows up in all kinds of ways. And one of these people, Emmett Fox, talks about how the following 9 other commandments are simply just a breakdown of the first. The next one talks about false idols. Well, again, that's really saying if you fall in love with a person or a certain amount of money or a type of automobile or a need to have anything or anyone be a certain way, you're giving your power away to it. So much so that you built a statue. It's really just saying the same thing, just giving an example of how that can be done. Do not take the Lord's name in vain. Ooh, there's another sticky wicket. Well, it turns out that in metaphysics, the word Lord represents the concept of law, universal law, the law of cause and effect, that thing which responds automatically and gives back to you according to whatever impress is made upon it, without question. That's all. I still have trouble with that word. And I can do law only because I've been in these classes and I've seen that word and I've spoken it and I understand what it means. And now we just walk around and say LOA, law of attraction. And I'm like, okay, I can handle that. But what it's really saying is that try as you might, when you speak your word, the truth is that you always give voice to what you believe in. And that is creative. So whatever you believe in is what you're creating. And what you're creating is bingo, back to number 1. You're making your God. So it turns out that all of these that say thou shalt not are really saying, go ahead and try it. You'll find that it doesn't work. You actually can't. It's not possible. So and the one about the Lord's name is basically that remember that what you believe in has power. And if you want to have what is freely given to you as inheritor of the kingdom, there's another word I don't normally use, but as your divine inheritance, then watch what you're believing, because that is your powerful word and that is bringing forth your experience. Remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. This is interesting. This idea that what you're really supposed to do is remember to study truth. Not because you should, but because you want to. There's some people who are somewhere else this morning. That's great. There are those of you and us who are here this morning because it's where we want to be. That's great. It's all good. The neat thing that I found in reading about this one was that this importance of letting go and resting is a demonstration of complete trust. If you have done your mental work, okay, we are metaphysicians, we are mental scientists. What we do is we hold an idea in mind until we believe it, and we allow the law of cause and effect, the creative process, to unfold as the demonstration and the manifestation of that thing. We have to let go. We have to completely release it. We have to trust it so much that we're going to go play for a whole day. It says, don't pick at it. Don't nibble at it. Trust. You did your work. Now let go and be on your way. Go play. Honor thy father and thy mother. Another one beyond the literal that has so much meaning. It says that we must have an honoring of our intellectual and our feeling natures. And we must have them in balance. We can't be all in the head and no heart. Can't be all in the heart with no head. Each of those is interdependent. And when they're in balance and they work together, we can demonstrate, manifest. Those are the words we like to use today. We can pray affirmatively. We can powerfully manifest, intend, and experience that which we desire. Well, that sounds different too. Okay, so how about thou shalt not kill? Well, guess what? Metaphysically, this means you really can't do that. The universe is affirmative. Whatever we believe in sets a creative process in motion, and what happens is that life unfolds accordingly. So if you want to end something that's no longer working, you withdraw your attention and put it over to where you do want to be. You simply create new life in place of the old one, but you really can't kill anything. So don't bother. It doesn't work that way. The interesting thing too, the metaphysical thing, whether it's idolatry or adultery, it goes back to the same thing. If you make someone else your God, the sun rises and sets over him or her or this or that, you're going to be out of sync. And things are going to get sticky. No big deal. Thou shalt not steal. This was another one. Metaphysically, I can't keep anything that I don't believe is really mine. I can get it for a little while. We all know this happens. I could go to a workshop and be high as a kite and manifest more for about 3 days afterwards, and then I'm going to go back to what I believe the most. Something will take place in my life that will create my comfortable, familiar equilibrium, and everybody and everything will go back to what I know best. One of the things that this says too is that no one can really take anything from you. Have you ever heard that in a support group or read it in a book? Nobody takes our personal power away. Nobody takes our right to choose from us. We give it up. And sometimes, if we're passive-aggressive, we take it back rather ungracefully. However, we can take it back quietly too. Thou shalt not bear false witness against your neighbor. Well, if we get back into the metaphysical thing on this as well, what it really means is, you know what? We're on this infinite continuum. And there's this idea of perfection, this blueprint that we're aiming to be as much like as we possibly can. And nobody's there yet. Many people say, if you're there, you wouldn't be here, But somewhere along the way, to the best of our ability every day, if we can be and demonstrate and try to think and feel and behave to the best of our ability in alignment with what appears to be good, that will only serve us all. And coveting your neighbor's anything, that's another thing. It says, thou shalt not, but the truth is, it simply can't be done. Because when we think about how much we've learned, for example, current day, about the law of attraction, about desiring a thing, I always think it's a lot like trying to chase a cat, right? Like, oh, please don't make a fool of yourself trying to chase me. You know better than that. I have sensed your anticipation of chasing me, and I'm already gone. We can't chase or covet. We can't wish and hope, because really all of those things just increase or at least solidify, cement that distance between us and the thing we desire. What we can do, though, and it was advised in many of the pieces of this translation, is use what we know about the creative process and the power of prayer. We teach affirmative prayer. We call it spiritual mind treatment. It doesn't really matter. But what matters is that we practice knowing the truth about all that is, our oneness with it, and then from that place, when we remember the truth about all that is, when we remember that we're one with it, then we say, therefore I know. And we make a declaration that is beyond what we're currently experiencing. We lift ourselves up as high as we can to the highest ideal that we're able to grasp. And what this says is that when we do that, we actually are transformed. It says that the thief can no longer steal. The ogre can no longer harm. And so on, and so on, and so on. We actually become transformed by what? The renewing of our mind. And then what we create, demonstrate, manifest, even what we desire and intend, just keeps getting up-leveled. And we become more like that which created us. It's really kind of cool. And I am laughing because I was tricked into finding this out. Saying, no, I'm not going to look at that. I'm not going to look at that. I was a kid at the YMCA day camp when I was really little. We had to stand in a circle and hold hands and say the Lord's Prayer. And I'm like, I'll just move my lips and look at my feet and hope nobody notices that I don't know this thing. And by the way, I don't want to. But now, whether we ran away from a faith of our upbringing, or if we ran away from all of them because we were the children of people who did. The funny thing is, no matter where we go, we seem to find our way back. But I've got to call it this, and he's got to call it that, and she's got to call it this, and they've got to call it that. And somewhere up there must be laughter because it doesn't really matter. So that's how we ended up with this exploration of the 10 Commandments and an interfaith celebration. Finally, I didn't bring George Carlin's. They weren't fit for this environment. But this is what I discovered when I said, okay, I'm going to look again. And I read through the list of alternatives. And these alternatives are much more like who and where we are today. And I'll tell you why that is. It's because this information isn't hidden. It's because awakening has been happening all over the place. It's because we've all stubbed our toes and blackened our eyes and come back. It's because, I think, that there is no God that says, I told you so. You know? All of that. This is what it's called summum. An esoteric religion that claims Moses originally walked down from Mount Sinai with the 7 aphorisms containing the principles of creation. And by the way, 10 or 7 or whatever, that's considered like an owner's manual, a guidebook. One thing says that it is a map to the sea of the ocean of life. And Kabbalistic, mystical Kabbalism says that it is a map to the tree of life. So, sea of life, tree of life, here we go. Because the Israelites were not yet capable of understanding them, he walked back up the mountain and returned again with the, quote, lower law of the 10 Commandments. The original 7 aphorisms, according to summum, are, number 1, the principle of psychokinesis. Summum is mind. The universe is a mental creation. Number 2, the principle of correspondence. Nothing rests. Everything moves. Everything vibrates. Number 3, the principle of vibration. Actually, that was the one I just read. Nothing rests. Everything moves. Everything vibrates. Number 4, the principle of opposition. Everything is dual. Everything has an opposing point. Everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. Extremes bond. All truths are but partial truths. All paradoxes may be reconciled. Number 5, the principle of rhythm. Everything flows out and in. Everything has its season. All things rise and fall. The pendulum swing expresses itself in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates. Number 6, the principle of cause and effect. Every cause has its effect. Every effect has its cause. Everything happens according to law. Chance is just a name for law not recognized. There are many fields of causation, but nothing escapes the law of destiny. And lastly, the principle of gender. Gender is in everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. Gender manifests on all levels. Now this sounds, and this is from that time period, obviously, a lot like ancient Hermetic teachings. From where? From Egypt. So I just think it's absolutely delightful that we, and I've said this before, that we have the opportunity to just sort of Google this history. Maybe some of it's out of context, and maybe some of it isn't entirely accurate. But think of it. We're not out stumbling, throwing stones into little caves in the desert and hearing something go clink and then going and telling our parents, look, I found, a vessel with some paper in it. We're not doing that now. We're actually reflecting on what this stuff means, and we have people who are doing that for us so we can get to the good stuff. I love that. So it turns out that even though I had what is sometimes called contempt prior to investigation, when I finally looked, when I was finally tricked into looking, I liked what I saw. I think I'm going to take that forward with me when I look at other stuff, or think that I won't. Yeah. So there's one thing I want to close with here. I'm going to invite each of you to just close your eyes. This is a little meditation. Just going to ask ourselves a couple questions. And I'm going to translate some more. Hold on. This is from Jack Addington. So as we take a moment and just close your eyes, we ask ourselves these simple questions to take home with us. Am I being true to my divine self? Am I putting other things before spirit? Am I making a spirit of money, of success? Am I insisting that I be important in other people's eyes? Am I making a spirit of trying to please personality? What am I letting occupy most of my attention? What do I think about day and night? What am I making so important that it causes me sleepless nights? What am I making so important that it causes me anxious moments? Am I remembering that spirit is the only power in my life? Am I remembering that spirit is everywhere present? Is there anything that I put before spirit? So as you open your eyes and we close this together, we recognize that as usual, it doesn't matter how we got there. We're just lovingly provided with so many clues. Whatever path or paths we take, we can't mess it up. We can't sell our soul. We can't lose our way for long. We'll always find our way back because we're wired with homing devices to find our way home. And we get to do it without leaving this planet. We get to do it and be one of those people who's walking around for whom things just work. And then we get to come together in service because we feel complete, because we feel whole. And when we do, we have this natural urge to give and to love and to serve. And we do it easily without thought of limitation, without thought of keeping score or being paid back. We just do it because we want to. And we become one of those people that our friends hunt down, call up, look for when we're having a funky day. And we just know how to let them know that it's going to be all right. Those are just a few of the gifts that we get to have by remembering the truth of who we are. So as we take this into our final closing prayer, I know for each and every one of us that the truth of our being is what has led us every moment of every day. It is what has brought us here together this morning. It is what goes out with us as we move forward in this experience. I know that it is the truth of everyone and everything. I know too that despite appearances, it insists on showing up as and in and through and all around all of its creations. And so I recognize that when I take the time and when we take the time to know the truth, it shows up for us as our experience. Though it begins as a needle in a haystack, it becomes more and more the prevalent idea, the dominant experience, the rule rather than anything else. And so I simply speak my word in gratitude of thanksgiving, knowing that as I persist in looking for the truth and the good, it awakens in me. It awakens in everyone and everything else. And then everything unlike it falls away into the nothingness from which it came. It is all good. Remembering this and giving thanks, I release my word. It's time to go play. It is already done. And together aloud we say, and so it is.